When a U.S. envoy quietly requested a technical consultation with Burkina Faso's government, everyone understood the real intention. Beneath the polite language was a blunt demand: full real-time access to Burkina Faso's gold data. Not the mines, not the tax structure, the data itself. Washington had just lifted mineral import restrictions, and suddenly America's biggest mining corporations were interested. But Ibrahim Traoré refused. No audits, no remote entry, no so-called transparency that handed control to foreign servers. A deal advertised as cooperation was, in reality, a 100% tax on sovereignty, a digital takeover wearing a diplomatic mask. This was never about gold ounces. It was about who controls Africa's future. Traoré's rejection wasn't a simple refusal. It was a signal. The Sahel shifted. Mali watched. Niger whispered. Guinea nodded. A new axis began to form, not with armies but with data. Not through aid but through gold. Not in Washington but in Ouagadougou. Point 1. The real demand wasn't gold, it was data sovereignty. The Americans asked for no land and no taxation rights. They asked for live access to every gram of gold mined, logged, and transported in real time. And not to Burkina Faso's treasury, but to servers housed in Houston. It wasn't investment, it was selective penetration into the country's economic heartbeat. Burkina Faso had recently completed a sovereign digital grid, a protected platform tracking gold from extraction to export. It was designed to close decades of loopholes exploited by foreign companies. Washington saw the system's power and wanted to plug into it, not for verification but to forecast. Real-time data on a nation's gold flow reveals fiscal pressure points. It shows when a government might need loans, when the local currency might weaken, and when a country is vulnerable to sanctions. You don't need to intervene militarily. You study the pulse and tighten the grip. The U.S. proposal, disguised inside 47 pages of technical wording, contained clauses granting remote anomaly verification and temporary operational intervention during production instability. Meaning, if the system shows a dip, they can enter. If the numbers appear inconsistent, they can override protocols. If they deem the gold pipeline unstable, they can freeze exports. This was not oversight. It was a quiet digital power grab. Traoré's experts dissected the document. Every clause was a backdoor. One allowed data synchronization with the Texas corporation's AI systems. Another granted write access during market volatility. In simple terms, they could change the data. If the data showed lower output, that became the official truth, even if the mines were fully functional. The Americans called it risk control. Burkina Faso called it intrusion. Traoré refused, not out of hostility but out of clarity. Data is the new uranium. Whoever controls the data controls the reactor. And Burkina Faso was not prepared to surrender the core of its economic independence. Point 2. The Sahel responded, not with statements but with strategy. When Burkina Faso rejected the proposal, the shift wasn't loud. It was quiet and regional. Messages moved silently across borders. Bamako, Niamey, Conakry. No broadcasts. No flags. Just one idea repeated: if they pressure you, they pressure us all. Mali, newly distanced from France, recognized the strategy. Niger, squeezed by ECOWAS sanctions, saw the pattern. Guinea, sitting on massive gold reserves, understood its relevance. And without a formal meeting, treaty, or announcement, the Sahel began to align. The alignment started with gold. A shared resource. A shared vulnerability. A shared shield. Within weeks, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger began coordinating their gold export schedules. Not to manipulate global prices, but to deny foreign leverage. Pressuring one meant pressuring all. Guinea joined the coordination quietly, creating a 4-country mineral corridor. Unofficial but functional. Then came the data layer. Each nation had developed independent tracking systems. But now they began cross-verifying their numbers. Not complete sharing, just enough to confirm authenticity. If a foreign company declared Burkina Faso's output unstable, Mali's data could contradict it. If Washington delayed a loan to Niger, Guinea could assist through gold-backed liquidity. This wasn't just resistance, it was the construction of a parallel architecture. Western analysts grew nervous. A leaked cable warned that a unified Sahelian gold block could affect 12% of global supply in under 2 years. Another report feared they could engineer scarcity or create oversupply to disrupt markets. But the Sahel wasn't trying to destabilize global gold. It was trying to exit dependency. To build a financial track where gold wasn't priced in dollars, reserves weren't stored abroad, and debt wasn't tied to the CFA franc. Where sovereignty existed as practice, not rhetoric. The Sahel didn't publish a declaration. It built a strategy, a new form of non-alignment based not on ideology, but on economic self-defense. Not by rejecting the world, but by refusing control. Not with weapons, but with transparency, their own. Point 3. Trump's real goal: stop the birth of an African gold OPEC. Why focus on Burkina Faso now? Because Washington wasn't trying to secure gold supply, it was trying to prevent coordination. A gold bloc formed by Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Guinea wouldn't simply control resources. It would control narratives. It could set terms like, we sell only in our own currency, or we export only if sanctions are lifted, or we mine only if refineries are built on African soil. That isn't a commodity market. That's a cartel. And the US has historically dismantled such structures. Trump's advisors saw the trajectory. France was losing influence. Russia and China were stepping in. And Africa was organizing, not through rebellion, but through digital control, sovereign tracking systems, and the slow creation of value chains within the continent. The so-called 100% tax was not a tax. It was a preventive strike, an attempt to own the data infrastructure before it grew powerful enough to challenge the global rulebook. Because if these four nations synchronized their exports, even informally, they could command around 15% of global gold supply. Not enough to dominate, but enough to weaken the dollar-gold link, encourage yuan or ruble-based pricing, and demand refinery construction inside Africa. This was the real threat. If Africa writes the rules, the entire game changes. IMF leverage drops. World Bank pressure fades. Sanctions lose potency. And the Washington consensus becomes a Ouagadougou counterplay. The US proposal wasn't about participation. It was about delay. Delay the bloc. Delay refineries. Delay de-dollarization. Traoré didn't delay. He rejected the plan, preserving not only the gold but the timeline Africa needed to build a new economic future, one where it trades on equal footing, sets negotiation terms, and owns its value. That is why the American proposal ultimately failed. It wasn't too bold. It was too late. Traoré didn't just reject a deal. He rejected a belief system, the assumption that African nations must open their systems to be credible, share their data to be trusted, and expose their resources to be legitimate. His refusal wasn't about protecting minds. It was about protecting mindset. A mindset that says sovereignty is not granted by transparency to outsiders, but by control from within. The Sahel understood. The world noticed. And somewhere in Washington, policy advisors rewrote their next memo. Not for Burkina Faso alone, but for any African nation ready to guard its economic core. Because the question has changed. It's no longer, will they sell? It's now, will they unite? And that question cannot be answered with sanctions, dollars, or digital access. Once gold becomes the glue, fragmentation becomes fuel. And Ouagadougou just lit the match.